Hey, friends, welcome back to Strength Happens. We decided to try something new this month, and instead of doing bi weekly episodes with different themes, we decided to take on the different aspects of caregiving and to really explore the impact it has had on all facets of our lives.
Caregiving is one of those roles that's both deeply meaningful and honestly incredibly difficult at times. There are moments of pure tenderness and love and joy, like those small acts of care that remind you how much you love that human being. And then there are those moments where you feel completely exhausted, worn out, and wondering just how you're going to get to the next day.
For both of us, we became instant caregivers when our daughters were born, both being our first children. And when you think of how caregiving first became a part of your life, what stands out the most?
I think for me, it really felt like being hit by that sudden storm in Florida that rolls in so quickly. It was like just a flash, right? It's right there.
Right.
It's almost like where that lightning strikes in Tampa. And for us was the day struck. Was really the day Hallie was born because it was just pure emergency after emergency. It was so life and death in those first days. And then that first year was so many medical emergencies. And for me, it was really that first year, those days were pure survival for me. It
hmm
was just running on adrenaline 24/7.
Yeah, our journey was a little bit different because it's been more of a long road journey caring for Morgan. It's different, but that same sense of life will never be the same is there. We're definitely not any professional expert with all the answers. We're two moms walking different versions of the same caregiving path, and we want to share and connect with other caregivers walking a similar path. If you had to describe being a caregiver in one word or phrase, what would that be?
That's really a tough one for me. When I was thinking about what would be one word, right?
It's hard.
Hold on. Yeah, it's like I don't know really how to encompass it in one word. I just have known that my true calling in life has always to be a mom, regardless of my profession and my degrees. What I've always wanted to give me richness in life was to be a mom,
Mhm,
and being a mom is accepting all that comes with it. So it's commitment on the hard days and pure joy on
mhm.
those delightful days of just making homemade ice cream or doing fun stuff with the kids. So I think caregiving for me, despite it being not what I expected parenthood to be, I guess the one word would really be joy.
That's a good one.
How
I
about
hadn't
for
really
you?
thought about that.
How would you describe it in one word?
I know I had a hard time trying to think of one word too, and everything that just kept coming back to me was love. I mean, and that basically, because everything around caregiving, the bottom of that feeling is love.
Absolutely. That's that's so true. And that's back to everything, right? We love our
Mhm,
kids, we love our commitment to them, we love our families, we love our spouses.
mhm.
Um, it's a big one.
And it would be
Love
hard
and
to
joy.
do. I think it would be hard to be a true caregiver without that underlying basis of love because it's so much.
It just keeps you grounded while you're
Mhm,
there, even on the tough days. You love that human being. And I know people have always asked me, how do you do it? And it's not a question of how you do it.
mhm.
These are your
You
kiddos. You
just
just do
do.
it. You love them more than anything on this earth. So that's just part of the role of being. It's just a different role than some people would expect.
Right.
And caregiving really changes everything when it's the role of caregiving for children with medical needs or disabilities. But one of the places I see caregiving showing up so much in our lives over the past, my gosh, it's been 25 years that we've been parents.
Yep.
Is really in all the relationships in our lives. And that could be our marriage, it could be the kids' sibling relationships, but it could also be relationships with friendships or relationships even with like my parents and how I
Right.
interact with them and the support they give. So, probably grounding the most in marriages for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think marriage is probably one of the harder ones due to the fact that you're living with this person now 24/7. You both entered this marriage with these hopes and dreams that aren't following the trajectory that you originally had hoped and planned for. And when all of a sudden we're being thrown into this whole new caregiving, not just parenting, because there's definitely a difference between parenting and caregiving, just maybe a different level of parenting. It's just that all of these things are now being introduced that you never thought would be an issue, or you just assumed life was going to go on this, happy trail. And now all of a sudden you're doing things you never thought you'd have to do.
Absolutely, and for me, and I think it's very similar for you, John and I, our engagement was so exciting, and we did so many fun
Mhm.
things, and our marriage and planning for a wedding, and it was everything I dreamed of, and my mom helped create such a special wedding day for me. John was still in grad school, and I was working a dream job being a faculty member, and then we got pregnant when we were told we might not be able to get pregnant, so it was all like daisies and roses,
Right.
right? Which
Right,
ironically
joy.
were
It was
yeah,
joy.
yeah, joy. And ironically, daisies and roses were the flowers at my wedding. So I think it was like getting taken aback when you had a child born with the medical issues. As the year progressed, we went from daisies and roses, those happy beginnings and that honeymoon phase, to being responsible for this child with so many issues and the
Mhm.
financial issues and the stress and moving and starting careers and making big decisions. It was very overwhelming to go from one extreme all the way to the other, I think, for us.
Yeah, there's no lead in where all of a sudden you're thrown into something and you deal with it. Where I think for us, it's just different because,
Different journey.
yeah, it's just a different journey and you're starting from day one. We
Right.
didn't start necessarily from day one, but within the first 6 months, that's when my caregiving journey started. Where for you, it was from day one.
Absolutely. And I do wanna highlight too, like, caregiving as parents, all parents are caregivers, right?
Right.
Because you are in charge of this human being, and making sure they're safe and healthy and fed and all those responsibilities. It's just a little different when you have such significant medical issues or disabilities. The caregiving just takes on a different hat. And for me, it put me in crisis mode for years, like that adrenaline dumping where you're constantly calling 911, resuscitating, going to the next doctor, having the therapist in the house. There was living on our own with no family around when we
Mm,
were in Tennessee. And as you were saying earlier, we didn't have that transition period. We didn't get to really have a young married couple and build that relationship. We kind of grew as a couple and as a marriage with this child who was so incredibly sick for the first 3, 4 years of her life,
mhm.
and then later her last 4 years of her life, and then having other children with medical issues. So, it was just very powerful and different than what anything I ever anticipated, and I guess I always thought I don't know, it was part of a grieving process. You're kind of processing all these emotions
Mhm.
of grieving the life you expected versus this beautiful life that you've given. Like, I wouldn't trade my kids for anything, but it was still a process of having to go through what I expected
Mhm.
parenting to be and the roles of parenting, and I still got some of those major roles, like I was a
Right.
sports mom, I was a PTA mom, but then you also have that medical caregiving role of changing out feeding tubes and taking to infusions and doctor's appointments and therapy and being their advocate and keeping medical records. And when I think of my marriage, one of the things that holds true for me is John and I had very strong communication prior to being married. Not that we had much, we dated a year and we're engaged a year, but we really emphasized communication. And also when we were getting married, Father Joe, and he said, "You're sitting next to this person and you're gonna get married to them, but you're not marrying them for love." And my mouth dropped and was like, "What? I love this
Of course.
man. I love him more than anything." And Father Joe said, "Marriage is not about love, marriage is about commitment, because
Mm,
there are gonna be days in your marriage that are harder than you could ever anticipate." And in my mind, I couldn't even imagine, like, John and I were on the same page with our values, we wanted a family. I never even anticipated sick children,
right.
and I never anticipated the barriers we were gonna come and the challenges we would face having 3 chronically ill kids, having the death of a daughter, um, but that those words of Father Joe really rang true to both John and I, that we are about commitment, and in all honesty, John's the only other person on this earth that's been through the same things I have,
Mhm.
you know? It was his child who died, it was his 3 kids who got sick, and I think unless you've been through something like that with somebody,
Well, you
That's
either stay together and work together or someone leaves.
yeah,
And you've been blessed with someone that is in for the long haul. You've both made that commitment.
yeah, yeah. Wow, I didn't know this was gonna be such an emotional talk today, Janine.
Well, and it's funny because I think for us as a whole, our world has revolved around our kids. And a lot of times, I know through our marriage, we've been married 20, we just did 27 years. And for us,
Congratulations.
we have had so many ebbs and flows. And I know a lot of our issues, our communication, we didn't work on communication beforehand. I think we just took it for granted. Steven's always saying communication is the key to a good relationship. I understand you saying that, but we both communicate different ways. And it's
Mhm.
taken me a long, long time to understand how to communicate to him so he listens to me and knowing when to sit back and listen to him.
And learning the communication language of the other person and respecting how they communicate is not
Mhm.
necessarily the way we do, and respecting what's important to them and coming to them on their level is just as important. It's really interesting you bring that up because I do a lot of executive coaching for big corporations, right?
Mm.
So I teach communication
Right.
skills based on personality types and based on the golden rule is do unto others as you want them to do unto you.
Right.
But we teach the platinum rule, do unto others as they want done unto them. So speak their language, right? So I have gone out and taught thousands of people this
Mm.
skill, and they've come back and said, "You've saved my marriage, you've saved my work life." It's such positive feedback. But it wasn't until several years into it that I was like, I really should practice what I preach. And because it's all about self-awareness, and I realize to keep a marriage strong, you have to be willing as a human being to be aware of where your faults are. One of the jokes I always say in my workshop is, "I am the queen of passive aggressive." Like, I'm just really good at being passive
I
aggressive, which is not the healthiest way
no.
to communicate with someone. Like, assertiveness is the best way to do that, and I realized it took me swallowing my pride going, "What is this doing? It's just making it worse. I'm just angering John, or I'm, like, just being diminutive. I'm just being a bitch, to be honest." And the day I realized, "Wow, Jill, this isn't about John's problem, this is about you," that's when
Mhm.
I was like, "I need to swallow my pride, and I need to be self-reflective on how I'm communicating." And that, I think, has really been a great strength for our marriage.
You really have to be able to communicate, and I think one of the harder things is sitting back and listening to what they're saying, and I think those are some of the things that I've learned work better in our relationship, is that I validate what I hear from him. I may not agree, but at least I'm taking time and listening to.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's not easy, especially as women.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a good head on my shoulders and know what I'm talking about, but sometimes I need to just step back and say, "Hey, everybody in life, whether it's your marriage relationship, your friend
Mhm,
relationship, your children, deserve to be validated." And one of the things I've embraced and I've learned is I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly
mhm.
growing. I'm still learning about how to better communicate with my spouse, how to better communicate with my children. I think if I stop being open to learning something new, that's the day where my relationships aren't gonna be as strong because I wanna be open to the process of growth.
Yeah.
And I think we've all heard those statistics, but about marriage and having kids with disabilities, but did you ever have that conversation with a doctor or anyone about what divorce rates or how it impacts marriages or other children or
Well, when I was pregnant with Matthew, my second, I was close to getting an ultrasound that time period. I saw Dr. Whitehead and we started talking about the chances of having another child like Morgan. We had done the genetic testing and I was really concerned about the ultrasound and just making sure and doing any extra testing that we needed to do. And he's like, well, we'll send you to a level 2. That way they can be a
Mhm.
little bit more in detail. He goes, but um, I want you to know he is a dad of a Down syndrome child. So I really respected that he
the
understood the
the
road that
doctor
my
what?
journey. Dr. Whitehead?
Okay, but the
Uh,
doctor was a parent of a
yeah.
child with Down syndrome?
Yeah,
Okay.
he had a Down syndrome child older than Morgan. And he had said that in parents with special needs kids, the divorce rate was around 85%. And I was shocked by that. I guess now I understand why, but at that point in time, you're like, oh, like, why is it so much higher? But, the stresses and all of the things that come into what happens over their lifespan, it's a lot of stress. But it made me realize that at that point in time, we had to make a commitment, which that was like a big thing you had said earlier, is that we had to make a personal commitment to each other, and we would have to put the work in to be stronger, better at communicating so that we stayed on the same page. That was a huge eye opener for me, and I think it also helped put perspective on the journey that we were gonna have,
Mhm.
and that it
It's
made
very
us
different.
work harder. I think it made the commitment even stronger, that even in times that our marriage struggled, I think the bottom line was that Morgan was our common denominator that kept us together, that we made sure that we would find our way back.
That's awesome.
If I don't know if I didn't have that conversation with that doctor, if it would have taken me longer to understand this, that you really have to make that commitment. Like the priest said to you guys, that marriage isn't just about love and all the happy joy stuff. It's about a commitment to each other.
It's really interesting that you said that because we had a pediatrician when we lived in Nashville, and I remember just absolutely exhausted one day. It was a Saturday, it was the doctor on call. He's like, "I'm so glad I get to meet you and see you," and he said, "I just want you to know I'm talking to you not just as a pediatrician, but I'm talking to you as a parent." And he said his oldest daughter had, been diagnosed with Rett syndrome,
Mhm.
and he said, "My wife and I have been through the journey you and John are going through, and I want you to know the first year is pure survival. You're gonna look back after the first year and go, 'How did we survive that?' And the second year, you go, 'Oh, shit, we gotta do it again.'"
Yep.
And then you have another child, and instead of just having a child with a disability, you become a family
Mhm.
and you focused on that family. That conversation was a real turning point for me because I realized we're going to be okay. And I was thinking of what were some of the small ways that really kept us going on
Mhm.
those tough days. And I wasn't always good at finding those little things. I was so engulfed in the day to day caregiving, but John was fabulous at finding the little things. And he would like make silly games in the car and sing and dance with the kids. He started a tradition called Hile Piles,
Mhm.
mainly because he didn't wanna get out of bed in the morning and the kids would get up, and he would just say one kid would climb on, and then the other 2 would climb on, and then I'd snuggle in, and he's like, "Hile Pile," and they'd all
Yep.
jump up, and it became a tradition, and it was how we started our weekends.
Oh, I love that.
And I know during COVID, we couldn't leave the house. So there were 2 years we basically both worked at home and the kids went to school at home. And so he put up these bifold doors at the entrance to our bedroom. In our last Florida house, we had this huge bedroom with an even bigger bathroom, and he set up a card table in the bathroom and covered it with a tablecloth and candles and a charcuterie board, a John charcuterie
Oh,
board,
look at
and a
John
glass
being all
of
romantic.
it was so romantic. And candles and a glass of wine, and he would come in to my office, and he'd knock on the door, and he'd be like, "I'm wondering if you'd like to go on a date. There's this great cafe across the way." And he saw the importance of doing those things, and he told the kids, "Look, this is our apartment over here. You're not allowed in anymore during COVID." And it was just such a nice way to keep our relationship strong
Mhm.
when we were all getting on each other's nerves and we were just kind of spent and exhausted.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
are there
during that
any
time was
ways
hard
yeah.
because we are all
Are there
stuck.
any ways you guys worked for that or you do as a couple or
We try to do at least one night a month, a date night where the kids are not allowed to come to dinner with us. I have adult children that live at home, and any free meal out, they're jumping in. Um, so I've put a hard stop. I'm like, no, I want at least one night a month where I can have him to myself. That's my time to connect with him, the talking, and that's what I need. So I've been a lot more verbal about things that I need. And that's one of the things that I feel has made it much better for us. He works weekends, so he's off during the week. Every Thursday is considered our day to spend together to do things. We'll go grocery shopping, or Costco runs are a big thing. Lunch. And sometimes he'll take out the pool chairs, put towels all down for me. He'll get drinks, and then we'll lay by the pool for a couple hours before Morgan gets home.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
nice.
And he buys me flowers every week. And
He
um,
he is a Costco flower
He
shopper. He
does.
is
He
so good
loves
at
his
that.
Costco shopping. So he brings home flowers every week, and to me, it lets me know he's thinking of me. And
I
it's
love
kind of
that.
funny. While he's shopping at Costco, he's thinking of his wife.
Hey, if you can get a man who goes past food to think of his wife and buy flowers, that's huge.
Well, and I'm not always good about thanking him. I sometimes take it for granted. I definitely need to be better at saying thank you for thinking of me, or giving me a hug or something. I think now that the kids are older,
Mhm.
especially when the girls and Matthew were all out of the house that first semester in college, I really tried to make sure we started to really reconnect at that time, because it was just going to be the three of us from that point forward. Now that they're home all the time, it's harder to find those quiet times alone where we can have conversations without the kids getting involved, things that we might not want them to be involved in.
Right, you can have those,
Yeah.
like, future goals or concerns all shared when the kids aren't around.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. For me, I had to really learn love languages, and I learned this early on,
Hmm.
and, respecting that John and I communicate our love to each other differently.
Right.
He's very much words of affirmation and acts of service. So even just like each have household responsibilities, and one of his is taking out the trash Monday and Friday. And so if I happen to take out the trash before he gets home on like
Hmm.
Thursday night, he'll be like, "Oh, wow, thank you so much for that." But it's those it doesn't take much, it doesn't take a lot of
Right.
money, it's just showing that time and the fact that you know that person, and, like, I felt so loved one Christmas because John bought me a bike during COVID,
Hmm.
and I want
I remember
Neely and
that.
I were bike Yeah, Neely and I were biking a lot, but my bike was dying, and I really wanted this pretty blue bike from Dick's. He drove, I found out later, to, like, 6 Dick's Sporting Goods and had to go all the way to Sarasota
To
to
find the
find it.
color.
Yeah. Well, no, just to find any bike because they
Real?
were
Oh,
all
well,
sold
during
out
COVID,
during
everything was
COVID.
so, like, hard to
Every
find.
well, and everybody was wanting bikes and things you could do outdoors, so he found the blue one I wanted at Sarasota, and then he sat there and waited 2 hours while they put it together, and I was
Wow.
so surprised and felt so loved
Yeah.
because he did that. So those were some of the things that helped me learn I don't have to spend tons of money on him, but if I learn what he appreciates
Mhm.
and really show that appreciation, it goes a long way for him as a human being.
Was a friend of mine for one of my birthdays in our early years of marriage bought me the book, The 5 Love Languages, and that was really eye-opening, and it really helped put perspective on that everyone has their own way to show and receive love. So, highly recommend.
One of the things John and I really love to do now, going for a hike in the mountains or in the
Mhm.
hills or wherever, it's just something we can do together and go at a slow pace and really connect and talk to one another. It's just our time. Like you were saying, you guys cut aside that time, and
Yeah, you strip
I really
everything
appreciate.
away, and you can just focus
Yeah.
on the 2 of you without the distractions of someone coming in to talk to you, or
What other relationships beyond like marriage and things like that have you seen in your house that's affected as being a caregiver of kids with chronic illness or disabilities?
I think the sibling relationships, I'm sure our kids can do a whole episode on this on their own about their perspective. Well, and it's also perspective. And we kind of thought that we wanted them to be able to provide a sibling perspective. I think it would be very valuable. And not that I always had the greatest communication. Things when I thought everything was going great, and then I find out it wasn't.
And their perspective as a five-year-old,
Mhm.
they remember how they felt as a five-year-old is not necessarily the reality of how we were treating them, right?
Mhm.
They were a young child. Like, my kids were 9 and 11 when Hallie died. My youngest never knew anything different than Hallie having chronic illness. Neither of my kids did.
Right.
So, it's it's a very different perspective, and sometimes as they get to be adults, they don't always look back and see how we did our best to make
Mhm.
them feel included, but we also have to give them grace that that was them at that part of their life. It's such an integral stage of
Yeah.
the child development, and to be overwhelmed with a sibling in the hospital, your mom not there because you're in the hospital with one kiddo. Does John take off work this time? Do we switch shifts
Right.
so I can get home to see the kids? It's so much of a balancing act for us,
Hmm.
especially with Hallie, but also with 3 kids, and Neely wasn't diagnosed till after Hallie passed, so it was really B and Hallie being sick, and I remember we put Neely in sports and travel teams just so she felt attention and felt special.
Right.
I would take off time to travel with the team, or John would be at a game, and that was huge for her to have that attention, but those were some of the things we had to do to make sure we really compensated, but despite as much as I tried to compensate for not being there, it wasn't always felt by them.
Right. Yeah.
I remember too, um, Neely wasn't diagnosed with immune deficiency and her medical issues till she was, like, 12 or 13, and she was 11 and a half when Hallie passed, and I remember her when she started getting really sick and having to get infusions, she goes, "Why'd I ever wish to be sick like them?" And I go, "What?"
Mhm.
She goes, "I used to wish I could have need infusions too, so I go to the hospital with you guys. Now I regret ever thinking."
And it's funny because, like you said, they're approaching it from whatever age they are at that time in their development at that time. And at that age, they're craving our attention.
And we did our best to include her in everything, even the medical, like, "Let's go to infusion," and she's like, "Nah."
Yeah, I
But,
remember bringing them all to infusion, and it's such a cluster, and you're trying to get them all situated, and they're all on their little Nintendo DSs, and it
oh,
was
the
just
DS, yeah.
but there was no room, and then I remember bringing them to downtown St. Pete, and I brought them out to Kilwins for ice cream because that was how I compensated for them having to spend 4 hours at the hospital with Morgan, but in the summer months, that's what I had to do, I could
It's
sometimes
just
leave them with my
survival.
mom, but, you know.
I mean, that's one of the relationships that's been my saving grace, my mom, and there were times when I would take my youngest for infusion at the hospital, and I would drop the older 2 off with my mom and take B to the hospital, but there were days where you couldn't avoid it, and immunology, all 3 kids had to go,
Mhm.
and it would be like, "Oh, the Heilmans are here," and it was like controlled chaos. One was getting blood pressure, then the other one, then the other, then
Yeah.
they were doing pulse oxes, then they were doing pulmonary function tests, and I'm, like, sweating, just exhausted from shifting from one nurse to the other, and I remember, we would go to the vending machine, and everybody could pick out a drink and a treat while we were waiting for the doctor, and then afterwards, we would go to the pirate ship at All
Oh,
Children's and
yeah.
play on the pirate ship, and then we'd get McDonald's on the way home for dinner. So we tried to integrate as much of that as possible, but there were those days where everything you do, it's not always enough, and then there were days where my youngest looked at me and was like, "Mom, what were the hospitals like when you were growing up?" And I
Like,
was
I
like,
don't know.
"Buddy, I didn't hang out at a hospital." And they're
Right.
like, "Oh, really? But they're so much fun." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." It's just they had a whole different way of growing up, they went to therapy centers, they
Yeah,
were so it was really trying to normalize an abnormal childhood
yeah.
um, as best as possible. I mean, we do our best, and I always said to my kids, "I will pay for your therapy when you get older," and because I know it's not gonna be easy, and I know there's a lot of this that's not normal, and it's not the way it's supposed to be, but
Yeah. Well, and I feel like I know when I learned I through reading and research years and years ago about, the glass child and
yeah.
how it's basically a non-disabled sibling of a child with a significant either physical or mental disability or chronic illness, and they feel ignored or invisible or overlooked because the family's focus is primarily on the disabled sibling.
Mhm.
And I've always had that in the back of my head thinking that, "Oh, I have 3 kids that are glass children." Like, I just always kind of had that in the back of my mind. Although they never said anything or never portrayed necessarily that they were glass children until my daughter went away to college, and she struggled with a lot of mental health things that we thought we had dealt with some of it before she went away. And, um I've kinda come to grips that really she saw herself as that person.
Mm,
Whenever she struggled as a child, she didn't want to bring attention to herself because she felt like we had enough of that with Morgan. She didn't want to worry us also.
Oh.
When she was really depressed, she just tried to deal with it on her own without telling us.
Such a heaviness to hold as a young kid, like, not wanting to put more
Yeah.
on our parents, and they're the kids at the time.
The other 2, her twin and her brother, they don't have that and maybe it has and it just hasn't come out yet, but I feel like being a sibling to a chronically ill sister has made my other 3 kids a lot more empathetic to
Mhm.
her and to others, which I feel like is wonderful, but it's also kinda sad.
Just thinking as you're sharing that story, um, our kids have become cognizant of us being caregivers, and they've turned into caregivers of us
Yeah.
in a way. I remember Neely told me but I remember it was Christmas time last year, and I was talking about, "Oh, when did you first, Santa wasn't real?" And Neely goes, "Well, it was 6th grade." And I go, "No, you didn't. Like, you wrote Santa a letter, and it was about Hallie and being in the hospital and Hallie being in heaven." And she goes, "Mom, I wrote that for you. I didn't want you it was your first Christmas without
Oh.
Hallie, and I didn't want you to think I didn't believe anymore because you love the Christmas
Mhm.
magic." And I was like, "Oh, boo-hoo,"
Oh
and I
my
started
yeah,
crying,
that yeah.
and I was like, for a 11-and-a-half-year-old to think about me, I was like, that shouldn't be something you worry about as a kid, right? But when you go through so much trauma, our kids go through not just micro traumas, but big traumas growing up in these types of households, that you become very empathetic of your parents too and what we're going through, and you try to make us feel loved and special. And I
Yeah.
appreciate it, but it's just it's heavy for me to feel like that they had that responsibility.
Yeah.
I remember my youngest, we were it was the year after it was the first Mother's Day after Hallie died, and I remember my younger 2 had made breakfast, and John had made sure it was really special because it's the first Mother's Day without Hallie, and I was like, "Oh, thank you so much," and I gave him a big hug, and I was like, "Oh, I gotta go to the restroom," and I went into my bathroom, and there was a little hallway to the bathroom, and I just started sobbing
Mm.
and sobbing. And my youngest came up to me with just a little peanut, 9
Yeah.
years old or maybe 10, and gave me the biggest hug and said, "Mommy, it's okay to cry. We know you still love us, but it's okay to cry." And then they sat there and held me while I cried and just like patted my head and said, "You're a good mommy. Happy Mother's Day." And I was like, they shouldn't have to be in this place. Like I appreciate it, and it was such a powerful moment. But after that moment, I was like, I should be loving on them, and they're comforting me. So it's really a balance as a caregiver. Part of these experiences have taught our children to be caregivers.
Right. I never thought of it in that way.
Yeah. Well, and I just reflected on that because of what you said your kids did, that
Well,
they
and I know
really were.
even for, like, birthdays and stuff Steven and I don't always exchange gifts because we'll do something together, but for them, they always knew that my love language is gift giving, as
Mhm.
you know, and well, and they feel like they need to do special gifts and stuff for me because that's what I do for them. So that they've learned also the love language that I need, and then they've learned how to do it.
And hopefully each generation gets a
Mhm.
little bit stronger and healthier and learns things that we didn't know growing up, right?
Yeah.
I'd be I'm really excited and interested if the girls decide, Neely, Katie, and Shannon, do a podcast because I really feel like it would be nice to hear their perspective and what they choose to share because I don't really ask my kids. I let them explore if they wanna share with me, they
Mhm.
can. And one of my kids loves to share and the other one doesn't, and that's okay. But they also, I feel like, are very protective of me, that they don't always share things because they don't want me to feel bad.
Well, and that'd be interesting. I'm sure that a lot of their perspective will break our hearts.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it, like, in a bad way, but it will make us sad because of we didn't want them to feel that way because we're being a
Well, I
mom
think
and
and
protective.
we tried so hard to normalize their life and protect them and give them as much love and compassion. Because, but even our despite our best efforts, it still may not be enough for their little heart when they're that young. So
Was there anything, like, big or small that you would do to make them feel seen or valued?
We do date days, so I pick one kid and they get to pick where they wanted to go eat or
Mhm.
where they want to we go to a bookstore or a Build-A-Bear, and they could pick out whatever they wanted that day, the activity, but it was just really quality time,
Yeah.
spending time with them. We were really a good family game night, and we would do Friday movie night, so
Yeah.
it was usually infusion night, but we'd pick out a movie, order pizza, do infusion, and make it all about family time
Yeah.
where we just spent time together.
Mm.
How about you?
I spent more time with the kids overall, which is, being the stay-at-home mom, but
Right.
Steven worked weekends, so he didn't have those long periods on the days of the weekend to go do things with them. So he really was good about taking them one-on-one or sometimes the twins together to lightning hockey games,
Yeah.
concerts. He'd take them ice skating, things like that. I feel like I spent a lot of time just sitting down, talking to them, and spending time with them, like quiet times or just, like you said, taking him on little trips. I couldn't necessarily always do one-on-one. That was hard for me just based on the 4 kids and juggling it. We always did a family trip every year. That, I think, helped us step out of a medical field and stop focusing everything on Morgan and medical things, and it just gave us time to be a family and do fun things without everyday stressors of life.
Right. Those are great.
Mm,
Now
but
that your kids are grown, are there some things you realize now that you would wanna do differently, or do you feel like you did everything that you could at that time?
I think reflecting back, I wish I'd put the kids in therapy when they were little. Not because anything was necessarily wrong, but I think it would have provided them ways to communicate their feelings and their needs and to help validate that it's hard being a sibling sometimes of a special needs child, adult, or medical issues. And I'm sure there are times that they had negative feelings around that. And I think allowing them to talk about having a sister like Morgan on their terms would have helped. And I wish I could have cloned myself so I didn't have to divide and conquer all the time.
Oh my god, that would have been a miracle. I would have swallowed that pill too if you could clone yourself.
So what about you?
I'm trying to think myself. I think I did the best I could with the knowledge I had at that time.
Hmm.
I There was a long time I thought things were gonna get better. Like, I thought kids were gonna outgrow immune deficiency. I thought we were in the clear with Hallie's medical issues. I thought we were turning the corner,
Right.
and so there was a lot I put a blind eye to, and I didn't really delve into everything I could have supported each of my kids as an individual with their own challenges and medical issues or what
Hmm.
have you. But at the same time, it was our life experience, so I don't know that I really would go back and change it. I tried to keep their childhood fun and keep it as normal as possible. I wish I had been a little more in tune, especially after Hallie died. I was so consumed with my own grief that
Hmm.
first year, and I tried to put a Band-Aid on the other kids' grief and I thought I did well, but looking back, I was so numb that first year.
Yeah. That's a hard I don't know that anything could have prepared you on how to deal with that either.
And I wish I had asked for help more. I'm someone who, when life got difficult, I didn't share that with friendships. I pulled away, and I think
Hmm.
we've talked about that in a previous episode, that even with you, I pulled away when Hallie got super sick. I pulled away from a lot of people,
Right.
and I never told anybody what it was like. One, because if I told everybody how difficult our day-to-day life was,
Hmm.
they wouldn't believe me 'cause it was so and it was something I just internalized. I didn't even tell my mom. John and I both experienced it, but even then I kept to myself. And I think I one thing I wish I going back, I would ask for help more and really be open to somebody I felt safe with. And I think you're probably the only person that I felt safe enough to share everything,
Hmm.
um, because you've been through it, right? So you know that experience.
Well, and I think
Um,
too, you worry that you become too much.
yes,
I don't share half the stuff that goes on, and I might tell you in passing, like, even last week, my dad's like, "Oh, can you pick up your nephew or something?" I'm like, "Oh, I can't. We have an appointment with,
oncology
this
or whatever.
specialist." Yeah, and he's like, "Oh," like,
Sorry,
they
we
had
can
no
cut that
idea
out.
because I don't share all that.
Yeah.
I just don't because I'm like, everything becomes big and I don't want it to, and I don't want that to be the focus. And with friendships, I think that's one of the harder things is that when you share too much in regards to anything, people pull back and away from you. I don't care
They
whether
get
it's
scared.
care like you're a caregiver or if you're going through a divorce or like all of these little things, friendships don't always survive those things. And I think in our situation, people don't want to always hear about all the things that our kids have gone through because it's kind of unbelievable that they can have that many things. You know what
And
I
that they're
mean?
still going through
Even
it,
though they
you know?
do, and that's the thing. I'm like, but that's what our lives are. But I don't also want to define myself by that either. So it's a hard juggle when it comes to
I
friendships.
I agree 100%. I think it's a hard balance. I have had and still have amazing friendships in my life.
Hmm.
People I can text at a moment's notice. My college friends, I can text and be like, "Hey, can you pray for this?" And they'll do that in reciprocation, ask for prayers. And I have friends from when my kids were in school and in sports and in neighborhood and that are still some amazing friends
Hmm.
I stay in touch with. But I don't share this side. Even what we share on this podcast is the tip of an iceberg of what our lives are like. We're just sharing like a snapshot into this.
Right.
We're not sharing the big picture because one, it would be like a reality TV and my husband would not approve of how much I would share.
Well, there's
Um
that.
and my kid would not approve. But it's also It it's exactly what you said, I don't wanna feel a burden, but I remember one time that reinforced this lesson, and Hallie was probably 8 or 9, so I'd been a parent for 9 years, had not shared the good, the bad, the ugly with anyone, and I remember I was just having a day where the littles were at preschool, Hallie was at elementary school, and I just lost it. I got another medical bill. I was like, "How are we gonna pay this?"
Hmm.
Insurance companies, all this stuff, and I was just sobbing on my living room floor, and there was a knock at the door, and I peeked through the peephole, and it was a friend, and it was, "Do I open the door and let them see this,
Hmm.
or do I just ignore it?" And I open the door, and I'm just like that
Yeah.
uncontrollable sobbing with that is not pretty, that ugly cry, and they're like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Just normal insurance," and I just unloaded on them, and they're like, "Oh my god," and I go, "I just need to take a shower," and I shut the door, and then they're, like, calling other people, "I'm so worried about Jill, she's sobbing," and I'm like, "I do this every week, like, I just let you see it for the first time," and I realized when that happened and they all came to my door, "We're so worried about you. We called John. We did this." And I'm like,
Oh gosh.
this is normal. I just don't show you this side.
Right.
After that, I stopped. I didn't show anybody that side because it was a burden. I was too much. They got
Yeah.
scared
It
and
was like
I don't know
they
what.
overreacted, but justifiably, they thought they were doing the right thing because
Oh,
they didn't
100%.
understand. They just didn't get it.
100%.
Yeah.
They were doing it in love, but
Right.
to me, I'm like, "This is my norm. I just don't wanna be a scary norm, and I don't wanna focus on this." But we still keep living that every day, you know? And so I think something for me is I've grown up in friendships in that I've learned I have to put work and effort in because I am someone who will pull back.
Mhm.
And so when I see myself not connecting with some of my Florida friends since I've moved, I'll try and reach out and really reconnect because I have to put the effort in.
Yeah.
And I think it's made me, after Hallie died and you guys all came to the funeral, God, you got me sappy this episode. I get all choked up. I remember seeing you guys at the funeral and I was like, what are you guys doing here? And you're like, wouldn't be anywhere else. And I realized, wow, I've really pulled myself out of people's lives these past couple years. And I promised myself I wouldn't do that to you again because I really could have benefited from having you guys in my life. And my kids could have benefited from having you guys in their lives. And I promised myself I wouldn't do that with your friendship anymore, even when it gets hard.
I appreciate it. And I feel like with you moving, I remember when you first said that you guys were thinking of it, that I was sad and I was like, "Oh, are we going to lose our friendship again?" And thankfully, I think both of us really value and know how important our friendship is. It supersedes almost every other relationship other than my husband. And if I didn't have it, I'd be keeping all of these things inside. Um, but yeah, I'm grateful that you're not pulling away and that you're not thinking that it's too much being far away.
100%. Oh, back
Oh,
to saying
there you
100%.
go. There you go.
Hey, Travis Kelce says it on his podcast a lot, so I'm feeling pretty safe here.
Oh, well,
I'm
now
in good company.
so you're trending.
I'm trending.
Yep.
He's trending after me. I'm sure he's
Yes,
following me.
he did. I bet he heard the episode. He saw your TikTok of 100%.
And it just said, "Oh,
And
yeah,
that
I
sounds
say
pretty cool. She sounds like a cool lady.
I'm gonna follow that." Yeah, I think it shows the value. If anything, I feel like we're closer even since I've moved because we've had to put the work in and not just be like, "Oh, you're take it for granted that you're there," you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I think so in a lot of
I mean,
ways.
if the cell reception was better in the state of Connecticut, you'd probably hear from me more on my trips across the state. I just lose you all the time when I'm chatting on the phone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think for me too, since I've come up here, I've made friends at work and things like that, but I haven't really found or like built those friendships beyond work outside of. And I think part of me is a little scared to
Mm.
allow people into that side of my world that is I don't want to be too much,
Right. Yeah, it is
you
hard
know.
when you meet new people. Like, I tend to put all of that on the back burner.
Yeah. Yeah. I know our village friends I love because I can just go and not be a mom and
Yeah.
just be with the village and have a glass of wine and chat about life and who's moving where and living where. And I really miss that little connection, even if it was once a month or every couple months.
Well,
It's
lately,
been nice.
I found I had to consciously make myself go, and I started to realize that even though they weren't going through what I was going through, most of them had situations that warranted the support and love that we were needing. So it was kind of like, even though they couldn't relate to my situation and I couldn't necessarily relate to their situation, there was still that common ground of the feeling behind it. And that has really allowed me to feel more comfortable sharing things now and again. But I do still not really talk about all of the medical crap that we've been going through. Like, I just don't. Because I don't want to go and then be like, "Oh, Janine came again. Oh, all she talked about was all Morgan
Yep.
shit."
Oh my god, that's exactly what my how I feel. You just said the words that are in my brain. Thank you. It's you don't wanna walk in a room and go, "Oh,
Yeah,
another
or,
medical
we gotta
issue."
talk about medical shit again," instead of it just being lighthearted. And I think I also go into those nights that I need a lighthearted night. I don't wanna talk about all of that. Like,
Right,
I
absolutely.
don't need to keep talking about it over and over. I'm living it.
Yeah.
It's not because I wanna keep it from you or I don't wanna share it. I just don't want that to be everything. I don't want that to be the
Yeah,
basis of our relationship.
well, and there's different friendships for different parts of our
Mhm.
lives. Like, there are friendships that you needed when your kids were in school. There's friendships you
Right.
need when your kids are in sports. There's friendships you need for through a lifetime. We can have friendships for different parts of our life, and that having you as such a strong friend doesn't invalidate any of our other friends. It's just we've gone through something that we can understand
Right.
and have a deeper appreciation of where I've never felt like a burden to you. I've never felt like I'm talking too much about one topic that's, about my kids because I feel like you've been there for me in the same ways I've been there for you.
Right.
But like I had a Florida friend call and say, "Hey, my kiddo's going through this life experience. I don't know what to do. And could you, do you have any resources or blah, blah, blah?" And I felt so like, "Oh my god, I'm not the only one." So many people have been supportive to me. I feel like a little piece of me is able to give back what
Mhm.
so many people have given to my family. And so it's a richness when we can offer that support to somebody. So
It's finding those relationships that understand you won't always be able to go to mom's night out or head to a game or a concert or out to dinner. There's going to possibly be a time where you're going to be like, oh, I can't do that. And you need to find a group of friends that won't hold that against you and won't be like, oh, well, you didn't show up for the last 5 times. I'm not inviting you anymore because you need those friends to understand.
That sixth time that they do ask you and you're able to come is a lifesaver to you.
And you
You
have
need
to
that
put
as
the work in as well. Like you also have to put yourself out there in other ways to keep and
absolutely.
maintain that relationship because,
Yeah. "Hey, do you wanna grab a cup of coffee?
right,
Hey, drop them a text to check in on them."
right.
It's a and that was a hard thing for me to realize because I was in survival mode for so long
Mhm.
and triaging kids that I was like, "I'm not just trying to nurture my family, but I also wanna nurture these friendships in my life because those people are important to me."
Yeah.
But it took time to learn how to nurture those friendships.
But I think as a whole, we have to remember that relationships matter and the love you give and caregiving is huge. But don't forget the love you need to.
Absolutely. Care for yourself as much as you would care for others. I know that's a hard one to remember. It's been really a joy to speak with you about this today. I guess I needed to hear this
And
because we have such a large following that I'm sure they will be on bated breath waiting to hear what we're going to say next. So,
oh yeah. But
hey, if we're just saying it for ourselves, this has been helping me deal with some of my things I haven't processed in years or thought about in years.
relationship with our spouses, I think that was a really key because your spouse, significant other, they're the person that's there all the time. So I think sitting back and reflecting on some of the things that maybe you don't do in your marriage or you could
Or you
improve
don't
on.
appreciate.
Right.
Like, there's things I don't appreciate, and
Yeah.
it's it's nice to reflect back and go, "Oh, wow, this is powerful."
Yeah. For everyone listening, maybe take this time to reflect on one relationship they want to nurture this week and,
Absolutely, but
make that one small step.
thank you all for listening this week as we talk a little bit about caregiving and relationships. Tune in next week as we'll be talking about caregiving and self care for ourselves as caregivers. Lots to share on that topic. Please follow us on Instagram, on TikTok, and on your favorite podcast station. We would love to hear from you all and let us know what you'd like to hear about caregiving this month.